What's up, guys? This is Coach Donny from Elevate Yourself. As you see, I'm not alone. We got a special guest, Christian Herr from PME Volleyball. We're both at the VNL event in Arlington, Texas, and we happened to run into each other. And I've been following his stuff for the last couple years, and it's just been really great to see you grow the volleyball community, but your own passion and your own style for content creation.
So what's up, guys? I am PME Volleyball. I'm originally from Long Island, New York, and I attend college and play at a Division III program in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. The school is called LBC, and yeah, I've been loving it. It's a great team, great environment. You guys can find some of my stuff all over the place. We are currently on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube as our main platforms.
And those should be linked at the bottom of the screen if you want to check them out. He also has his college games uploaded on his YouTube channel.
Yes.
So if you want to follow his team, you could definitely do that. So first question, how did you get into volleyball?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right off the bat, like when I was younger, I just wasn't really good at any other sport I tried. Like I was enrolled in the soccer, the basketball. Those just didn't really seem to click for me. I just couldn't figure out the skills, or I looked a little goofy out there. It just really wasn't the right fit for me. Yeah. So my parents wanted me to be athletic, or wanted me to stay in good shape and go do something athletic. So they decided that, hey, maybe we'll try volleyball. So I tried out for my middle school volleyball team in 7th grade, and the coach at the time was really the person who got me into volleyball. His name was Coach Sturitz, and he is who I credit with first giving me the love for the game. Yeah, from there I tried out, I made the team in 7th grade.
Nice.
That spring I got into a club team, so from that point in my life, volleyball was 12 months all year round. We would have the school season, and then right after we'd have club season, because unlike most of the country, New York is one of those states that has their volleyball in the fall instead of the spring. So we had a fall season, and then right after I would jump into club. And played all the way throughout high school, had an opportunity to play in college, and I took it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, is volleyball pretty popular where you're from? Like, was it hard to make the team when you first started?
So at the time, I'd say Long Island there was a lot of really good talent on Long Island, and even around like the Division I, II, and III landscapes, you'll find quite a handful of players from Long Island, New York, who play various different programs. I don't think it's necessarily one of the powerhouses, like a California or a Hawaii, even some places, Illinois. But I definitely think that A, it's growing, and B, there was a handful of really good talent on Long Island.
Okay, so we just say there's enough talent for it's popular and for it to be competitive enough.
Yes, and it was a sanctioned sport, so there was opportunities to play. I know there were some states, like even New Jersey right next to us, and the city, like they just don't have it as a sanctioned sport. So I was grateful to have it as a thing I could do in high school.
That's awesome. And then how did you become a setter? Because I see a lot of hitting videos as well, and obviously you're left-handed, 6'3".
Yeah, so I credit that again with my middle school coach. He, right off the bat, knew I was a lefty, and I wasn't particularly super tall amongst my peers at the time, but he did know that I was a lefty, and his whole thing was like, if you're a left-handed volleyball player, we're gonna get you setting. And so it was me, and then there was like a 6'1" 8th grader who was also being trained to be a setter at that time.
That's awesome. And I also noticed you have Korean tattoos.
Yes.
So I think for a lot of people that don't know what your cultural background is, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so my mother was from South Korea originally. She was born there, and then at a very young age, she was adopted into a family from Michigan. So she grew up in a white household in Michigan, and when I got the tattoos, they are done in South Korean. This one says Psalms 121:2, and this one says, "My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." So it's the reference and then the verse. I wouldn't say I'm super engaged like with my South Korean heritage, but I love my mother, and she has been there for me every step of the way. So this was more of a way for me to pay homage to her, more than it was like embracing my inner Korean culture, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's really beautiful. So you talk about your faith. You want to share a little bit about that? So those are inspired by your faith?
Yeah, absolutely. And so my dad, he's a pastor. So I grew up in the church. That was from the very beginning of my life, that was always a part of me, was my faith. And growing up, it was just figuring out like what my own identity was in my faith, rather than just taking what was shown to me by my parents. And I think part of what my struggle has been is believing in myself. And just, I've had issues with confidence, like on and off the court, just with my life. And I came across this verse on my phone one day. It was like the Bible app, and it gives you a daily verse every day. And that was the daily verse. And it kind of just hit me in that moment. Like, I don't need to do everything by myself. I don't need to carry myself with that weight. And instead, I can look to the person who made the floors that we're walking on and the heavens up above to give me that strength, you know, to be more confident in my own ability.
One verse that kind of kept me going, Romans 8:28, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord. I grew up in the 90s, 80s, and like early 2000s where volleyball was not a very diverse sport. And then also culturally, like being as an Asian male, we're not really looked highly upon in society, right? We're often emasculated or just considered second class, not athletic, not alpha, so quote. And so growing up, experiencing, you know, just some racial discrimination in the sport and just in the city that I lived in. Luckily, the city I lived in was pretty accepting, but still it was pretty commonplace when we go travel to be treated differently. I wanted to have some type of purpose to all this difficulty I was experiencing. And it's just crazy coming full force here, having a platform to promote social justice, to promote positivity, and to share stories like yours where, you know, it's okay to be different, and that's something that we should be celebrating. And that verse really gave me a lot of purpose because it gave me hope that this was all gonna lead up to a very powerful purpose that I was born to do. And here I am now, you know, with Elevate Yourself and talking with you and, you know, really communicating that type of love and positivity, you know, through our social media.
Absolutely, I love that.
Thanks.
Great message.
If you want to jump higher and become a more dominant athlete on the court, then use my Elevate Jump training programs to increase your vertical jump. They include a bodyweight only program so you can train with zero equipment, a starter program if you're new to weight training and plyometrics, and the Elevation template, which guides you over 12 months of intense training and comes with a mobile training app. Use my discount code and link below to get 5% off all my training programs and start jumping higher today.
So now you're here at VNL.
Yes.
Let's talk about where that started, like how you even got into social media and why you started that.
Yeah, so I started around 3 years ago, and I think it's around this time. Basically, my journey with social media was, before I got into it, I had Instagram, and I couldn't even tell you how to get like an Instagram post up, like some pictures. It just wasn't in my DNA and blood at the time to know how to do that. But I always knew I had a knack for A, wanting to control my own future, and B, creating things. And so through that, I kind of was encouraged by some family friends to maybe explore creating volleyball content. And I never really thought of doing that before. I knew that TikTok was a big place for short form content and was kind of taking over that space. So I gave it a try, and I think the 6th video that I made just blew up out of the waters. Like overnight, I looked at it and it had 500,000 views.
Wow.
And waking up, just getting into it, like just only have been posting like 5 videos before that, I was like, holy smokes, like this is crazy. And from that point on, I just challenged myself to continue posting every single day and seeing where that would take me. And eventually we got onto platforms like Instagram, and then the last platform that I joined about maybe a year and a half ago, and seriously like started to post on, was YouTube.
Okay. And then you shared with me that VNL reached out directly to you.
Yes.
And I think that's so relevant because I feel like you do represent the next generation of just how people are interacting and what people enjoy, but also specifically volleyball content. So can you share a little bit about how that went about, how they reached out to you, and what your thought process was being contacted by the biggest volleyball organization in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I was blown away when I first read that email. I thought it was spam, you know, because it just sounded too good to be true in that moment. But as I was reading the details, it gave me a number to reach out to and maybe set up an appointment to talk about like what this opportunity would look like. And I didn't know what it would become, but I was definitely interested in the moment. So I ended up having that Zoom call, and within a couple of weeks, we really just started to get the ball rolling with the people at the VNLs, at Volleyball World, just coming up with a plan for what I would do over the VNLs for 2024.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was over the 7-week-long VNL trip, they would be sending me to a different country every week, depending on where Team USA was. And it was crazy. Like that, we're week 3 right now, and we've been in Brazil, and then just came from Turkey to come to Texas. And it's been a crazy trip. We still got 4 destinations after this.
Yeah.
But it's also been some of the most exciting moments of my life to be able to follow some of the highest level volleyball players in the world and watch them compete against each other on such a big stage. It's really been just a dream come true, and I've been enjoying it so far.
That's awesome. Is this your first time traveling outside of the United States?
I've been to a couple of countries before, but I would say no more than like a 2-week trip before that.
This is probably your first exposure watching international volleyball up close, right?
Yes.
What's your opinion on the international game, and who are some of your favorite players that you like watching?
My opinion on the international game is there are so many countries in the world that are so talented at volleyball. And what I have yet to see, one of the teams that I really want to see play is Japan. I've yet to see them play, but I think I will have an opportunity to. But there's just so many different styles of volleyball and so many ways to be successful in the game. And it's been really cool to see some of those ways be reenacted through how people are playing. But one of my favorite players up until this point has been 17-year-old Simeon Nikolov. I watched him and Bulgaria play against the United States of America, and it just blew my mind away that a 17-year-old was not only playing at that level, but competing, like one of the guys at that level. And it kind of just goes to show that with international volleyball, it's just the way their systems are set up to get their players to a pro national level. It's just different in the United States. Because you won't see a lot of 17-year-olds on Team USA. You know? Obviously, the game is elevated to an entirely new level, and it's just opened my eyes to see that.
And you're currently playing college right now.
Yes.
Like, have you thought about what things you've been seeing you want to start applying to your game when you go back to college? Yeah,
I just see these setters and the way that they work and how they distribute the balls, and kind of, I'm not able to obviously see what they're thinking directly, but I can kind of pick up on what they're reading while they're making their sets. And I think part of the information that I'm going to take back with me is how can I implement like some of that into my own game, you know? And when it comes to a technique standpoint, these are some of the most beautiful hands I've seen from setters in the world, right? So it's like there are things that I should be doing in order to clean up my technique. And then on the mental side of the game, also things that I'm picking up on where it's like, okay, he's making the read in this situation, or he's getting his middle more involved because he sees a favorable matchup there. There are just certain things like that where I'm picking up on them, and I think it's going to help me become a better player when I go back.
Definitely. I watched one of your game videos. You have really good footwork.
Thank you.
I think for someone that is already 6'3", lefty, it can be easy to kind of jump forward and back and just be athletic and just throw the ball. But you're consistently always going to the ball and then going straight up, so you have a lot of options there. So I think you're pretty close.
I appreciate that, I really do.
Yeah. A couple more questions. So as you're going to the next couple places, countries in VNL, what content have you planned? Like, I know you're doing vlogs and then you're posting almost daily pretty much on your accounts, right? So what else? Do you have any other kind of projects that you're shooting? Yeah,
so eventually, by the time my trip ends, I want to do 7 individual videos kind of just breaking down each country I was in. Right now it's like daily vlogs every other day. You kind of get like a day look into what I'm doing. But at the end of the trip, I want to go back and I have all the footage and kind of just compile it into 7 long individual stories telling what I did in each country. And then at the very end, when it's all said and done, I want to work on a project where it's like a 1-hour long full story of what the VNLs looks like for PME Volleyball.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and I think I've never really done like anything documentary style, but I think this is kind of what I want to do, is have shots of me sitting down in front of a camera and talking about my experiences. And hopefully being able to turn that into a masterpiece where even if it doesn't necessarily do well, it's more of like a passion project for me at that point, you know?
Yeah. And I think people will connect with that. I think a lot of Americans don't even know what it's like to be in the VNL. But I think you have a really good storytelling style where obviously you have your reaction stuff where it's really entertaining, but I think you also have another side where it's a very honest perspective about what you're going through and what it's like to play in college. And I think people are really gonna connect with that. You know, at the end of the day, people just want to connect with what's real.
Yeah.
And I think you do a good job of presenting that.
Thank you. And so yeah, just to talk to that, it's like, that was kind of my struggle early on. Is like, my freshman year playing in college, I didn't really post any of my games until maybe the end. And part of that was I just didn't want to show people like me losing or like not playing well. And I think a learning process and a step that I took is like, people, it's exactly what you said, people are just going to connect with authenticity. And the reality of it is, there's one team that wins a national championship every year, right? And 99.9% of the rest of us are not going to be that person. And people connect with, I feel like, almost losing in a way more than they do winning. So I try and show people just what it looks like to authentically be a college player at this level, and hopefully encourage some of my younger audience that they should pursue that, because it's really cool to have that experience and not just have your volleyball career end after high school.
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started posting things, I used to do highlight videos, then I did full games, and it was very freeing when I first posted my first game that I didn't play well in. And I think because I grew up I'm just used to not being good, so I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna put it out there so my teammates can see it. And I was really blown away at how well received it was. It was a lot of like, it's okay, you'll get the next one. It just felt odd that people were even encouraging on that. And I think like you said, I think it's also important for people to remember that we're all human. Right. Yeah. And it's just so much easier to like be okay with our humanness and then move forward from that than to try to maintain a certain image of what we think is going to be successful. Especially now, where I think it's a lot easier to paint pictures of what we want to be versus who we truly are. So, and it's just more sustainable, you know. It's so hard to play a character long term, and it's just much easier just to be yourself.
Exactly.
So, last question. So I see a bunch of fans going up to you. Is this your first experience like being really recognized? I mean, you probably get recognized at college games, but how has that been for you, managing like a growing stardom and like achieving the celebrity status, and like what challenges have you experienced with that?
So I'd say up until maybe around 4 or 5 months ago, that was like a really hard thing for me. Is, if you guys don't actually know, I'm more just naturally introverted, and I don't necessarily feed off the energy of crowds and people. And I thought it was really cool that people were coming up to me and recognizing me and wanting to be able to take photos with me. But part of that just made me just a little uncomfortable, because I didn't necessarily want that attention. And I think I've grown in a way where I get to look at it and appreciate it for what it is. Because some of these people, some of these fans who come up and take photos with me, it's like, in one way or another, I've been able to touch them in a positive way, you know, create a positive influence for people to look up to and just associate with the game of volleyball. And I think that's really cool, you know? I'd say this is the first time being in the States in a volleyball environment like this, where there are hundreds and hundreds of volleyball players all in one room. Before that, the last time I was in an environment like that was my club days, and I just wasn't really as big as then. So it's been a really cool experience to see my followers and interact with them. And if you ever see me in public, don't be afraid to come up and ask for a photo. I'd be more than willing to do it, because it's cool, you know? Yeah.
You never know what that one interaction will do for somebody. And I always try to think back when I was younger and I looked up to some Olympians that I would saw, and I can't imagine if they shunned me, how that would radically change how I viewed volleyball and would I keep playing. And also, if I did achieve, I don't want to say celebrity status, but the influence that we have now, like that would have influenced how I would have treated others. So I'm really grateful for people like Reed Pretty, Matt Anderson, people that I think model that you can be a good person, you could be a champion, and you don't have to be a douchebag to still make a positive influence on the world. And I think that's what you're doing, and you know, you're in the right direction. It just takes a lot of practice. You know, as a fellow introvert, as soon as the game's over, I want to go straight to my room and just chill. But I think the fans really appreciate the extra energy that you give. I mean, almost like a discomfort that you're putting yourself to make others comfortable. And it's a really big blessing for them. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, and it's like, you probably feel this similarly, but we've taken on this responsibility, whether we like it or not. It just comes with the territory. And I think it's a role that we put ourselves in through our work, and part of our jobs is to, fulfill that role and be that for other people,
Yeah.
and it might get a little tiring sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's just part of the job.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for an interview. Really appreciate you taking time. I know you're super busy, and 7 weeks. I would have to do a lot of recovery, so.
Yeah, I already told everybody in my close-knit circle that week, maybe even 2 weeks after, I'm gonna be in my room, probably sleeping for all of it, and just take a break and enjoy a part of summer. So.
Yeah. Well, if you're ever in the Bay Area, hit me up and we'll get some Korean barbecue together. I'll show you some of my favorite spots.
I would love nothing more than that, Donny.
Cool. Well, there you heard it. Hopefully you got some tidbits from Christian and just the honesty that he's shared. And make sure you guys follow him. And I'm looking forward to watching that documentary. Make sure you check out his channel. It's going to be posted on YouTube for that one, and continue to follow him on his volleyball journey.